War correspondents become the eyes that reduce the distance between the battlefield and the world. And my guest today is Italian war correspondent Lorenzo Cremonesi, more than 40 years in journalism, reporting from Jerusalem, Iraq, Afghanistan and Lebanon, and covering Russia's war against Ukraine since 2014. He was also a witness in the MH17 case in The Hague. He has seen how wars are misunderstood at the start and how reality corrects assumptions. Lorenzo, welcome to the studio. I'm happy you are here.
Thank you very much, Nataliia.
So, Lorenzo, you were covering the Middle East war and the Russia's war against Ukraine since 2014. Do you see more similarities between those wars or differences?
No, many differences. This is, in the Russian-Ukrainian scenario, is a classic war. Is a war with armies, with border, with rules, with governments. And in the last years, in the last almost 50 years of war and crisis scenario which I followed, I had a lot of terrorism and guerrilla. Think about the Taliban in Afghanistan. It was not a real army. I think about the Palestinian groups, Hamas. I think about ISIS in Iraq, in Syria. I mainly followed war which were unconventional. This war put us back deeply in the 19th century. It's a war between armies. There is the Ukrainian army and there is a Russian army, and there are borders and rule and chain of commands. And this is like, it's an old war back. It's a very futuristic war with a drone, with all these new techniques. But the logic is the classic war logic.
Classic war logic. Okay, recently we had prisoners of war exchange.
Yeah.
And you know, the stories that our Ukrainian soldiers are telling about, it's horrifying. Lorenzo, why do you think Russia not even trying to hide the truth, how they are behaving to the soldiers? Well, they want the world to know about everything they are doing to them.
Listen, it's a brutal society. We hear terrible stories of how the Russian commandants treat their own soldiers. We know that Russian society is a brutal society. We have the elite, the white Russian in Moscow, and then we have the Buryati. We have all this reality of soldiers coming from the countryside which live in a world which is not our world. And so torture, abuse, bad treatment of prisoners is a norm among Russians and with the Ukrainians and of the civilians. Look what happened in Kherson under the occupation, all this. This idea of transferring of population, we saw it already in Crimea in 2014, is something that we heard when we were children from the Second World War, from the First World War, and is now reality. So it doesn't surprise me. And I also think that the Russians want to intimidate the Ukrainian society. I don't think they think about the public opinion of Europe or America. They are thinking about the public opinion in Ukraine. They want to intimidate. They want to push people away from the army.
In one of your interviews, you said that you were among those people that thought that Ukraine will fail at the beginning of full-scale invasion. Considering the fact that you were covering Russia's war in Ukraine since 2014, where this understanding was coming from, and when you realize it's not going to happen?
Well, you're touching a very important point. I'm not an expert on the Ukrainian and Russian scenario. All my professional life, for more than 40 years, was in the Middle East. I came here occasionally. I came here because I'm a war correspondent. When the Russians started the hostilities in 2014, I was asked to come. And at the time was possible also for us, as foreign correspondent, to cross, to go to the Russian side. I went to Donetsk, I went to Lugansk, I went to the Russian line, to the pro-Russian militia. And I had this kind of general knowledge. I remember seeing on the ground Russian troops. They were Russian volunteers in Donetsk, near the airport, who were fighting, and they even didn't hide to me they were Russian. So I understood, and of course I saw the famous story of the Malaysian airplane being shot down, when for me it was clear that, I have a long story on this, but if you want I will tell you.
Yeah, but, absolutely, because I said it in my intro, so I know.
Then it was clear to me that Putin was lying, and when Putin claimed that there were no Russian help to the pro-Russian groups in the Donbass, it was not true, because I saw them. I went to the Debaltseve battle on the front line with Russian. By chance, by the way, it was a mistake by driver. And I saw a lot of Russian. Actually, the elite troops who were getting Debaltseve, they were all Buryati, Eastern people, Mongol feature. And they were very angry with me because I saw them and they didn't want to be seen. So it was clear to me there was this kind of propaganda, which is part of the war. I mean, all war have propaganda, and all the states, all the parties involved in conflict lie, always. But Putin was methodically lying. That was my background. When I arrived here in 2022, all of us have preconception, and this is normale. If you read, if you follow stories, you make your mind, you have your thought reading of what you see, of knowing what you read. When I arrived, I was convinced, 99% of the words. You look at all the famous expert commentaries in America, in Europe, even pro-Ukrainian, anti-Russian, opposed to the Russian invasion, who were absolutely convinced that in 2-3 weeks, Putin would have taken Kiev. Remember the famous declaration by Biden, who was not pro-Russian at all, who told to Zelensky, leave Kiev, come out, we will send one commando, we'll rescue you, because you will be killed, you will be captured by the Russian. So I arrived, when I arrived here, my first, and I arrived in Lviv, in the night between the 24th and the 25th of February, the first day of the war. I was coming from Milano. I had to take a taxi from Warsaw. I arrived in the late evening, and then I came here 1 or 2 days later. In Kiev, it was the 26th or 27th. I look around, and I saw people barricading all the city, people preparing, and then I tell you, I had a meeting. That was very interesting, because as a war correspondent, I always know that the first problem for me as a foreign journalist in a hostile environment, I have logistical problem. I have to find a place with generator, with internet, with some food, some water. You don't die because of lack of food, but because of lack of water. So I was getting organized. I was preparing my place to resist, thinking that in few days, maybe in few hours, I would have seen Russian tanks in Majdanek. I would have seen Russian tank in the center of the city. I was sure. I was expecting that. And I even found someone who spoke it by chance, someone who spoke Italian, who told me, if you want, I have an underground area. I have one generator. I can help you. So I was, paying money to people to help me. And then I met a guy who looked very distinct. He was a retired colonel of the anti-aircraft, 56 or 57 years old, in one little supermarket near Kremlin. And I saw him quite confident, and he spoke English very well. So I don't know Ukrainian, so I asked him, what do you think? We are winning. I say, are you crazy? I know that you think I'm a foreigner, stupid, but the Russians are here, and No. Do you know about Hostomel? I didn't know about Hostomel. I never heard about Hostomel. Nobody spoke about Hostomel. Even the Ukrainians were not talking Hostomel yet. So I said, no, what is Hostomel? And he showed me, Hostomel is this airport, and the Russian, and he explained me and then he took me to his house near Kremlin, a beautiful house, and so listen, we defeat them. Look what happened. And he explained me all the battle of Hostomel. And then I look around and I start looking at everything in another light. And I remember calling my editor in Milano, my editor-in-chief, Luciano, telling Luciano, we should write a different story, maybe a little editorial saying, and if Putin will lose? He thought I was totally crazy. He said, are you mad? Everybody's saying, still at the moment, the literature, the idea all over the world was that Ukraine was lost. And I said, no, possibly not. We are not sure at all. And there was all this story coming out at this point from Ukrainian of the attacks against the big convoy. Do you remember the 60-kilometer convoy by the Russian? And it never arrived. And I mean, how they were in Chernobyl, it takes 2-3 hours to arrive here. How are coming, they don't come. And then the story was the Ukrainians were able to attack on the sideline. And then I understood that the story was much more complicated. And the Russians were not winning at all. And there were other pages to be written before something dramatic would have happened. So at that point, I started to think in a different way. And this is, how can I put it, is a privilege of the war correspondent who goes on the ground and he can change ideas. I always say the war correspondent, journalists who go ground correspondent, have a big privilege. We can change our idea. We can change our preconception.
Lorenzo, I often read the statements from the international correspondents here in Ukraine saying that probably they are staying in the most important country right now in the world where history is making. Do you share the kind of a view?
I definitely think, and I really think from the beginning of this war, so it's now 4 years, fully 4 years, that this story for the Western world, and especially for Europe, is the most important story. Of course, my newspaper, when Gaza happened, asked me to go there because I've been in Israel for so many years, and I stayed there, and it was in 2023, if you recall, 7th of October. Stayed there for 2 or 3 months. But I was still saying, hey, okay, this story is important for the Middle East, for Israel, for the Palestinians, but for us, Italian, Europeans, Western, NATO people, the story of Ukraine, of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict is a major story. And yes, I'm saying, probably it's not for an African, it's not for a Libyan, it's not for an Indian, but definitely for us, European, it is.
Yeah, actually talking about the global south, I think we should work much harder on, that angle and to spread information wider over there. I mean, in India, because they have still Russia today.
Of course, of course.
Lorenzo, what is your main focus right now in your materials? Is that battlefield, civilian stories, political issue?
I tell you, I used to come and always spend some time. Now, since I came back after Christmas, I came here before the end of the year, and I'm here, and I will stay here for at least another month and a half. And of course, the first offer I did was I go to describe the winter in war. We did many times in the previous winters, and the paper was not interested at the moment. At least, but I can see, because of course I follow the foreign press, the European press, the American press, French, English. The focus is not so much on the front line. We did a lot. I did a lot on the front. I follow Bakhmut, all the major battles, Mariupol, Avdiivka, all the major battles. Of course, all the area now. Last time I was in Drobopilia. Pokrovsk a lot. We were also a lot in Pokrovsk till when it was possible for a foreign correspondent. But lately, the attention of the public and of our editors is not so much on the front. I follow very much the diplomatic aspect, and this, in a way, go back to your previous question on what is important of this war. In Europe, and this is a very European perspective, I really think, and it's shared by my newspaper, that the Ukrainian scenario, the Ukrainian war, is somehow kind of a flag war for the medium power. I follow the Carney, the leader of Canada's talk in Davos, the need of the medium power like Germany, France, Italy, Canada, to be unified and to have a say in the international arena. Ukraine is our front line. And if Ukraine, as I think, will be able to resist, we will be not crushed by this Trump logic, or Putin logic, maybe even Xi logic, that the world is divided by three major powers and all the rest have to follow. We, through Ukraine, we can show that Europe have a say in the international world, and we can still follow rules, international law, and you cannot change the world scenario through powers. You can defend international law and all the building of, how can I put it, all the construction of check and balance and rules that we built after the end of the Second World War in order to avoid the repetition of the major world war. I still think that we can defend the UN, the NATO, and the international law through this place. And that's why it's important to stay with Ukraine, I think.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, Lorenzo. Because I'm always thinking whether we are correctly spreading and sending the right messages about Ukraine to the world. At the beginning of a full-scale invasion, we were picturing ourselves and our journalists international as a victim, and which was right. Then we were picturing ourselves as a very resilient nation, and the one that can very adapt on the front line, in the cities. And, you know, right now I see like we have the hardest winter, at least for the last 4 years. And it feels
you can
like...
say 11 years.
And even 11 years. And, you know, the Westerners, they're like, oh, that's Ukrainian. They're resilient. They will get through this. Don't you think that's kind of a dangerous message? And I don't know how to balance, as you said.
I tell you, one of the first things that I was trying to convey to because of course, now we journalists, even I'm coming from the real written press, we do everything. Many years ago, I used to have a photographer with me. If you have to do a little video, I had even a cameraman. Now we are much poor. The written press is much poor than before. I do everything. I do podcasts, I do video, I do audios for my newspaper. And I used to do little video. And I remember the first videos I did from Kremlin and from the center of Kiev during the war was exactly this. Hey, this is not Afghanistan. This is not even Baghdad. This is not India. This is not some strange Libyan. No, it's Europe. Here we have Armani, here we have Ferrari, here we have Bugatti, here we have Italian firm, we have cafe like we can find in Roma, Paris, or London. We are in Europe. And I remember talking with youngsters who were going on the front line. One of them, I remember interviewing him, and he told me, listen, I just married. He was 26 or 12, Yaroslav, I think was his name, and he married in Venice. And then some people I met again, they were having, they were just coming back from, because it was February, to fresh the holidays, Christmas holiday in some place, in Cervinia, in Italy, where there are, by the way, many Russians. Trying to say, these people are using to have our standard of living. They're dressing like us. They're not Taliban with the jalabia and the Kalashnikov, and they go to fight. And this touched one of the points. I wrote a book on this. It's called Guerra Infinita, Infinite War, which is exactly my point for many years, that we Europeans, we forgot how to defend ourselves. And that's one of the major problems we have in Italy, and I think in France, in many of the, especially in south of Europe, not in the north, but in south of Europe. The fact that you don't make war. You don't make any, because only criminal, only primitive people make war. And no, war can happen, and you have to defend, you have to be ready to defend yourself. So, and people with our standard of living can fight and even die to defend our freedom. That was my message. Here we have European people who are like us. They are not foreigners. They are like us, who are fighting and teaching us what we should do and how we could be. That was one of my points, and it is still today one of my points.
Yeah, you touched the Davos, and I was thinking, I was following all this, I was trying to follow all the statements from Davos conference, and this year, because I was going to Davos for the last 8 years, this was the one that I missed. And I was really, for the first time, I think I was so worried that something is changing, something is irreversible. Because I don't know why, but I don't feel like Europe feeling that they are in a war with Russia.
They don't.
I mean, in fact, they are, but
they don't
mentally,
realize. I agree.
And I was like listening to them, and probably the Canadian Prime Minister's speech was the one that shocked me. They're like, this is the reality we're living right now.
And also regarding to Zelensky's speech, which was very tough.
It was
very tough. It's saying, hey, Europe, you have to wake up.
Yeah.
That was the idea. Hey. And even the Italian Foreign Minister, Mr. Tajani, who was very much pro-Ukrainian, Meloni also, but Tajani more, he was quite, and even Crosetto, who is our Minister of Defense, who is totally pro-Ukrainian, they were quite offended. They took it personally. Hey, there is a way, a saying in Italy, which I think is universal, non si sputa nel piatto dove mangi. You don't spit in the plate where you eat. So the idea was, hey, come on, we support the Ukrainian, and look what Zelensky is telling us. And in effect, they misunderstood the point. Because Zelensky was not saying, I'm not grateful to the fact that Europe is giving us more money, now there are new 90 billion euro for us, etc. But the fact that you have to look at what's happening to us and prepare your defense and think in military terms, because Putin is threatening all of us. And that is not perceived. And believe me, maybe a little bit at the beginning, but today is somehow forgotten. Ukraine it's also why I'm coming here a lot. I think it's important to stay here and to report, even when the story is not on the front page anymore. Because the story for us is still here, as I was saying before. But I agree, the perception is that this is a story of the Ukrainian who are different from us, and is not concerning too much Europe. And that's, maybe this is even more alive as a sentiment, more spread among normal public than the leaders. Because I think our leaders are more aware, some of them, not Mr. Salvini, the North League, of course not, which is totally pro-Russian. And also, I tell you, if you speak specifically about Italy, Italy has a problem for sure. Because Italy, as you know, I was saying that in many other occasions, historically Italy is close to Russia. For many reasons, culturally, etc. But also because we had this, I want to remind you, we were the strongest communist party in Italy, in Europe. Mm-hmm. The Italian communists were very important, even stronger than the French one. And the connection, the historical connection, even before the Second World War, between the Russian Communist Party and the Italian and the Soviet, was very deep. And in Italy, wrongly so. And parallel to this sentiment of pro-Russian, etc., there is an anti-American sentiment, which is very deep. So the idea, in Italy, this Putin rhetoric for which the responsibility of the war is NATO expanding was very much spread. I remind you that not this Pope, not this new Pope, but Papa Francesco, Pope Francis Pope, even supported this rhetoric. Do you remember in summer 2023, we are a few months after the beginning of the war, when he spoke about the responsibility of NATO barking at the door of Russia. Barking at the door of Russia. Which is totally wrong.
Absolutely.
And I tell you because when I go to the school in Italy, I'm going a lot to school when I am back, and I ask people, sorry, do you remember what happened, talking about the Ukrainian-Russia survival, do you remember what happened in August 2021? People look at me and say, no, what happened? You don't? Because, the speed of news is so, it was a dramatic, I was there. The Taliban got Kabul. Mm-hmm. So, the NATO, the strongest Western coalition after the Second World War was defeated by the Taliban with sleepers.
Yes.
So what was that? It was the lowest point of the Western alliance. Putin attacks is not when the NATO is strong, but when NATO is totally defeated. Where? In Afghanistan, which for Putin is symbolically the end of the Soviet Union. So what does it mean? That Putin attacks when NATO is not really expanding at all. Macron, at the time, even spoke about the dismantling of NATO. The need of change it because we are totally worthless. So this idea that Putin attack when we are weak and not when we are strong, was totally not perceived in Italy. In Italy, and I think generally in Europe. And that's it. So
yeah, actually, you were answering my next question, because recently there was a resonated, wide-spread case with Italian who was going to Ukraine on the bus. You've heard about that. And he got not a very pleasant conversation with one of the Ukrainian girls.
Of course.
And he was forbidden to enter Ukraine.
Of course.
Yeah, and I was thinking, what's behind that the Italian man was so convinced that he wasn't like 50-50. He was saying, Putin is fine. He's great. And I don't know, my question is, Lorenzo, do you feel like your materials from Ukraine are not only reaching the audience, but helping to change the attitude and, perception?
You are touching a point which has to do not so much with Ukraine, but with media in general. In the age of social media, of the globalization of communication, media are much less important. And somehow they are even considered biased, because the real truth is on the social media.
So we have to go to TikTok, or?
Then that's a problem. Now, I still think this is something I always say in the School of Journalism when I go. I think we still have hope, because fake news are now dominating, are really growing. Artificial intelligence is changing reality. So if you look really on the international media, who are the media? Which are the media which are really still holding? The media who still have the courage to do journalism. What does it mean to do journalism? To go on the ground. I'm here. I see. I tell you what I see. And then you judge. But at least I can tell you what I see. That's my way. I think we have a lot of problems. I am perceived, like many other journalists, kind of biased, paid by the Ukrainians, supported by I don't know which strange power. So there is a lot of non-trust. But I think our only way to answer to all this skepticism vis-à-vis the work of a journalist is to do journalism. I don't have any other answer. We have to stay on the ground as much as we can and report as much as we can. We have also, I think we are paying for big mistakes which had been done, I think, by many journalists, also in Italy. When I remember during the Gulf War, during the Iraqi war, where there were some of my colleagues saying they were in Baghdad and they were in Kuwait City or in Rome. And it happened in Italy quite a lot. And that, I think, didn't help us. But now we are helped by the fact that I can say, hey, I have a video, I'm here in Kherson, I'm here in Kramatorsk, and I'm here. This is Kramatorsk, this is my face. The only answer that I can give is to defend journalists, be journalists.
Be journalists. It's so sad when I see Westerners still believe Russia, who's constantly breaking any promises, any agreements. always spreading fake news. And they still, after so many years, there are plenty of people, not only some, who believe them, who believe the Kremlin narratives.
I think Zelensky in this way was like a journalist. When Putin declared that he got Kupiansk, and
Yes, and
Zelensky
he
in
went there.
October went there, hey, I'm here.
Hello, I'm here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
And that was important.
That was important.
That
Yeah.
was,
That
it was a
great
gesture
move.
of journalism.
Yeah.
Not true.
Yes.
It's not true. And that's what I always repeat. Hey, Putin is always declaring victory, and we are going back to the previous subject, but they didn't get fully Pokrovsk yet. And we are really talking about few hundred square kilometers. So where is the victory?
Lorenzo, considering the fact that you're often going to the front line, which story you remember the most that touched you, and what are your always main goal there? That's some personalities or wider, different angle?
Well, when you go to the front line, it's always a very intense experience. It's also very dangerous. And I tell you, we are now, I covered many wars. The most worrying war I did was Iraq. It was very dangerous. There were ISIS looking for us. It was dangerous not only during the war, but after, when all the terrorism. But now, for us, the big problem when we go to the front line or near the front line are the drones. The drones are really attacking now everybody. They're attacking civilian cars. They call it safari drones. And you are in danger even when you are 10 kilometers from the front line. In the last story I had, our major problem was to fast, to look on the sky, to be ready to jump out on the car and worry of drone attack. We are journalists, colleagues, Ukrainian, and not being killed by the drone or gravely injured. So this really changed it is a big problem. It is a big problem for everybody, including us. Having said that, well, of course, a lot of human story, people, but one story which particularly is in my memory, let's say, it was a couple of times when I went to the front line with units, discovering this little bunker, dig in old farm, in old houses near the border, near the front, near the trenches, where were they building their own drones. And that was interesting, that little laboratory with students of engineering, etc., preparing, adapting, changing the pieces, organizing the drone according with the need of the unit and the feature of the front line. It was very interesting. I still consider it the characteristic of this war. This intelligence, this technique, and used to modify the arm that are in your hands, and intelligence. That always affect me, and until now I'm very much interested about that. Then of course one story which was really touching for me was, for instance, to see what is it called, and I stayed with them a couple of times. One day fully because it was too dangerous when the Russians were bombing in Bakhmut. One of the last days when it was still possible to go, it was really at the last period. Staying with these zombies, they were called, these people who were still there, the civilians. Staying with them, looking how they were living, how they were staying, what they were talking about, the way in which they were organized. And one thing that always affects me is not so much the story of the children, as many journalists do, but it is the old people. Because, a child, you leave your house, you have a future. A refugee has a future. If you have 5, 6, 10 years, you get out, it's terrible, but still you lose your father, your mother, but still you have your life in front of you. And when you go to the front line, the people who stay there, generally, the civilian are old people and crippled people. People who they are poor, they cannot support themselves when they leave, and they're old. And the old people, especially in the countryside, they don't want to leave their houses. Mm-hmm. They're the animals, they're their life, they're the picture they have, and when they leave, they're lost. because in the houses there are roots. And that's always affected me. An old person, when an old person leaves the place where he had been all his life, when he has the memory, the picture of his past, is lost.
Yeah, I remember speaking about the drones, actually, and danger on the front line. We used to think that 10 years ago, the front line was like how it was. The front line, we see one army and another, the enemy army, and that's the front line. Well, something like this that we were reading in the books and history books. And right now, it's like this.
It's very large. It's
Super.
25 kilometers. I have a very, very good friend, Yaroslav, another Yaroslav. He was an officer. We met of intelligence. We met by chance in the Krematorsk supermarket 3 years ago. He was a great guy, great guy. He took me to the front line with him near Liman. And we met 5 or 6 here, and then we went together. He was a funny guy. He had a very nice girlfriend. And we used to stay together. And he was killed. He was killed by a drone. He died in the hospital after 6 months of coma here in Kiev. I went to see him a couple of times. And he was killed by a drone, not on the front line. Mm-hmm. A drone attacked his car. There were 3 people. One died, one was injured but not gravely, and he was incredible. He was in coma for 5 months. And drone. And the problem is that that's another problem with this war, that the Russians are attacking civilian cars. In Kherson, you can see they're attacking civilians. They're entering even in the houses.
Have you been in such a danger?
Yes. I was with Frontline many times. Near Avdiivka, when a unit, and we had a drone looking for us. In Dobropilia, I have a video that we arrived in the center, and we went to the market, and there were drones on the ground, and the soldiers were shooting at the drones. Yeah, of course. And it's very scary because you can do nothing. You hide, and you hear the noise. You don't see many times you don't see the drone. You know that they are. You hear the noise. They're getting closer and far, and you know they are going to hunt for you. That is scary. It's terrifying.
Does the long exposure of the war change journalists? How it has changed all the war you have been? How it has changed you personally?
It changed. I wrote a long chapter about that in my book. In Iraq, I stayed too much. I was younger, and war changed people. And we don't know. Sometimes we think we are immortal because I'm a journalist, I'm a foreigner, I am an observer, but you are part of it. I had at least post-traumatic stress. I didn't know, but I stayed too much. I think journalists have to go on front line and you have to try to leave. It's also dangerous when you go back because the front line changes all the time. I remember Beirut in the 80s during the Civil War. They were, especially in city battle, in warfare, in urban warfare, as we say, because the line changed all the time. When you stay a long time in a place, when you go back, you use the same criteria, but every time it changes. You have snipers, you have drones, and if you go back to the same place, you use the criteria of 3 months before. Each time you have to adapt yourself. But I still think that for us, it's not healthy to stay too much in a war zone because you lose your balance and you are not so lucid when you report.
Lorenzo, finally, what is from your perspective, the main problem international correspondent facing when covering Russia's war against Ukraine, or the main misconception right now they are putting in their materials?
Well, you have to remember always one thing that sometimes I tell to my colleagues in Italy, because we have a couple of guys who go to Russia and they report from Moscow, that tomorrow I can take my car with no bodyguard, with no minders, as you say, no spokesman, no observer, and I go. And I meet a guy who will tell me, I hate Zelensky, I love Putin, I can report. And nobody will tell me nothing. I remember one girl, a woman, her name was, I think, Helen, near Pokrovsk. We were in the field. There was an hospital that had been hit by Russian bombs. It was artillery, destroyed. And she came out cursing me. You Western journalists, you. And I said, I'm Italian. You are working with American. You're imperialist, capitalist, clearly. And I reported. I videoed her, and nothing happened to me. So you have always to remember one thing, that here I can go, and it's a free place. On the other side, you don't. We don't have serious reportage of Western journalists on the front line in Mariupol with the Russian. And if they do, they always are with minder, controlled. They do more or less what the Russian want. And that's a very important difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to less focus on how to fight Russian propaganda and Russian narrative, but just to, create our own truth. I mean, not to create, but just report about this and to spread this much more than we do. Lorenzo, thank you so much for your time, for coming in our studio, and I wish you luck to stay safe whenever you go in Ukraine, and I'm waiting for your more reports in your Italian media. Thank you so much.
Grazie. Thank you very much.
Grazie.